Hi everyone, this is the first part of my two-part sequence on price discrimination. I decided to record this chapter to explain how we can adapt the pricing strategy from the perfect competition and monopoly models in a more realistic setting. I encourage you to email me or talk to me before or after class if you have any questions on this material. In both the perfect competition and monopoly model, we assume that there is an equilibrium price and that this particular equilibrium price is being paid by every single customer. But in the real world, and certainly for most, if not all of your companies, you could charge a different price to different customers for the same product, which is a pricing strategy called price discrimination. The textbook chapter covers a wider variety of pricing strategies, but I decided to take a deeper dive into price discrimination because I personally find it really interesting and relevant. There are different ways that companies can charge different prices to different consumers for the same product. One way that we will study is through quantity discounts. So the idea here is that the more you buy, the lower the per unit price. Second, companies can set a different price based on buyer characteristics, such as a senior citizen discount or a student discount. We'll also cover a variety of other sales clauses that firms use, like bundling and versioning. More on that later in this video. A firm needs to satisfy 3 requirements in order for it to engage in a price discrimination strategy. So the first is that the firm must have market power, which is the ability to set a price greater than marginal cost. Recall that a perfectly competitive firm charges a price equal to marginal cost, just like all of its rivals. As such, it would be impossible for a perfectly competitive firm to price discriminate because there's no wiggle room to charge different prices to different customers. 1 penny more and no one will buy from you, yet 1 penny less and the company sells to customers below cost. Remember that in perfect competition, everyone is charging the same price and it's equal to their marginal cost. But if you're a monopolist, or any firm facing a downward sloping demand curve, then you're able to charge a price greater than your marginal cost. They experience a profit margin where they could potentially say, we will give a discount to students in order to attract their business and increase our profits. The second requirement is different consumers must have different valuations of the product. What enables companies to potentially charge a different price is a different willingness to pay for each of the different customers. If a company is able to determine each consumer's unique value for their product, then they can set the price based on these valuations so that someone who values the product more pays a higher price, while someone who values the product less would get a discount. Finally, you need to be able to identify which price each customer is eligible for. If the company is offering a discount to active military personnel, then you need to find a way to easily verify that someone is indeed an active military personnel. I really enjoy studying price discrimination, but what I don't like is the way that these pricing strategies are named. So there are 3 types of price discrimination. The names of these different types are very unclear and vague, so I will do my best to provide a more appropriate name when we go through each of these 3 types in turn. The first type is first-degree price discrimination, but I prefer to call it perfect price discrimination because this is ideally what the company would do if it could charge each and every customer a different price. First-degree price discrimination is the practice of setting a price equal to the individual customer's willingness to pay. Theoretically, people going to an Orioles game would show up to Camden Yards and the worker at the box office will ask them how much they're willing to pay and charge them that amount for the tickets. This breaks down in the real world since consumers have an incentive to lie and say that they're only willing and able to pay $5 even if they are lifelong Orioles fans. Given that consumers might not be open and honest about their true willingness to pay for a product, it's really hard to find a real-world example of first-degree price discrimination. However, one of my grad school friends is from Pakistan, and he mentioned how vendors at farmers markets there do not post their price for their products. In their society, you can tell how affluent someone is from their appearance and speech. So the vendor will just charge a different price to different customers based on their looks and how they talk. This is similar to my experience shopping at the night market in Vietnam with Loyola ELMBA students. Vendors started with a high price, but even prices that we were able to negotiate were well above what our tour guide said she would pay. These vendors are effectively price discriminating between tourists and locals. Recall that one way to think about the demand curve is that it plots the valuations of the different buyers. Ideally, companies will want to collect any sort of good feeling that buyers get when they potentially pay a lower price than what they think the product is worth. So first-degree price discrimination is perfect price discrimination because this allows firms to truly maximize their profits by extracting the full amount that consumers are willing and able to pay. Just like with first-degree price discrimination, second-degree price discrimination is not self-explanatory. I like to call it self-selection because what's happening is companies are providing a menu of options and consumers will choose what they like best among those options. There are 3 examples of second-degree price discrimination. First is quantity discounts, second is versioning, and third is bundling. We will go through each example in turn. So one of my favorite foods is chicken wings. When I was in grad school, my friends and I would frequently go to Buffalo Wild Wings because it was near the economics building at Ohio State. This slide presents the chicken wing prices that I got from the Buffalo Wild Wings menu, which provides a great example of quantity discounts. Now that doesn't mean that the total price is lower when you buy more. Instead, quantity discounts means that the per unit price, or the per wing price in this case, is lower as quantity increases. The point here is to incentivize someone like me to buy and eat more wings than someone like my wife, who's not a big fan of wings. To be sure, the price you see on their menu is the total price, but the price we graph on the demand curve is the price per wing. Just as we saw in the previous slide, the more wings you eat are associated with a higher quantity demanded. In order to induce more people to buy more wings, Buffalo Wild Wings has to provide a quantity discount by lowering the price. Under perfect competition or monopoly, the per wing price would be constant regardless of the amount of consumption. However, this is an example of quantity discounts since someone eating 5 wings ends up paying a different price than someone who eats 10 wings. Another example of second-degree price discrimination is versioning, which occurs when a company provides different versions of the same product. You can think of this like Apple offering an iPhone and iPhone Plus, or Honda offering EX, EXL, or Touring trims for their CR-V. These are basically the same product with slight differences for consumers to choose. One interesting type of versioning is damaged goods, which means that a company takes their product and modifies it to make it slightly worse in order to broaden their product line. IBM provides an example of damaged goods. They produced one of the first laser printers with a print speed of 10 pages per minute. Nowadays, laser printers can print much faster than that, but back in the day, 10 pages per minute was a big deal compared to dot matrix printers like we still sometimes see at certain banks. Anyways, HP comes out with their own laser printer with a slower print speed, but also a lower price. So what does IBM do? They come out with a second model with a computer code that maxes out the print speed at 5 pages per minute. The idea is that IBM can lower the price with this modified laser printer and compete head-to-head with HP. But if a consumer still wants to buy the original 10 pages per minute printer, then the consumer is signaling that they have relatively inelastic demand for this type of printer, and so IBM can really jack up the price on the higher quality printer and exploit the inelastic demand of these customers. Another interesting example of damaged goods is associated with a DVD player manufactured by Sharp, which is a Japanese electronics company. DVDs in Europe are formatted differently than DVDs in the US. If you bought a European DVD, you might not be able to play it on an American DVD player. Sharp made a DVD player that plays both formats, but also developed a model that only plays the American format. So what's the difference between these two DVD players? The higher quality DVD player has a button on the remote that toggles between the European format and the American format. So what about the remote for the American-only DVD player? Well, it turns out that the only difference in the remote is that plastic cover for the American-only DVD player covers up that button to toggle between formats. So someone carved out a hole in the remote and revealed the functioning button underneath and then posted it on the internet. Gotta love the internet. Notice that this is a damaged good because Sharp is taking a higher quality product and purposefully modifying it in a negative way in order to diversify their product line. It's an ingenious strategy. Now we can take a look at bundling, which is our third kind of second-degree price discrimination. Again, the idea is to provide a menu of options. Before, we talked about options based on quantity or versions. Now the options are based on whether we want to buy products or services a la carte or combined together in a bundle. So how does bundling prices work? Comcast provides mixed bundling options for their services, which means that you can buy internet, TV, or phone service individually, or you can buy them as a group. When I moved to my house, the only cable operator that services my neighborhood is Comcast, which provided the following deal. I could get TV individually for $59.99 per month. I could get internet individually for $39.99 per month, and I could get home phone for $29.99 per month. If you add all this up, it would cost just under $130 per month. Or, I could bundle the three services together and pay $79.99 per month. I personally ended up just going with internet as a standalone service and rely on Hulu Live TV and Netflix to watch sports, TV shows, and movies. However, my neighbor got the bundled deal, so he's getting a discounted price for internet compared to me, which is precisely the idea behind price discrimination. So now we're going to get into third-degree price discrimination. Remember, first-degree price discrimination is perfect price discrimination, where consumers are charged their willingness to pay. Second-degree price discrimination is self-selection, where customers select between a menu of options. Here, third-degree price discrimination is selection by indicators, in which firms group customers into different market segments based on a particular characteristic and charge these different consumer groups a different price. So this is where student and military discounts will come to play. This is also where the ability to easily identify and verify who is eligible for a discount is important. Speaking of student discounts, the Orioles engage in third-degree price discrimination when they have student night, which happens on every Friday home game. Students can get tickets to sit in the left field upper reserve for $10 instead of $15. So why would the Orioles do this? Well, my undergraduate students tend to have a different price elasticity of demand for an Orioles game compared to me. Recall that share of the good in a consumer's budget is a determinant of price elasticity of demand. When you consider the price for tickets, parking, food, and maybe souvenirs, a night at a baseball game can take up a good chunk of a student's limited income. So their demand for Orioles tickets is more elastic than mine. How does that justify them getting a student discount? Well, the answer to that is justified with this graph. Notice that we have two demand curves here, with one on the left representing elastic demand and the one on the right illustrating inelastic demand. So the graph on the left represents students and the graph on the right represents other adults. To be sure, the Orioles costs are the same regardless of whether they sell the ticket to me or to one of my students, so we simplify this example by assuming constant marginal costs and illustrate the marginal cost curve as a horizontal line. Recall that a firm maximizes profits by producing a quantity such that marginal revenue equals marginal cost. In this graph, the price that maximizes profits for students is P2, which is lower than P1, or the price that maximizes profits for people like me. Therefore, third-degree price discrimination effectively lowers the price for consumers with more elastic demand, assuming that you can easily identify who belongs in each group. This is why you need to show your student ID card at the Orioles box office to get this student discount. This video covered the theory on price discrimination and how it applies to the supply and demand model. The next video will discuss possible antitrust issues associated with this pricing strategy. Feel free to email me with any questions that you have.